Welcome everyone. This is the Meshery development meeting. Today is June 23rd, 2021, and we'll start off with a couple of or with a big announcement from Lee. So, Lee, the stage is all yours.
Yeah, nice. Thanks. Well, I have a preemptive topic, and that is Neha. Neha,
Hi Lee. Hi everyone.
hello. Nice to see you. Nice to hear you. Neha, have you gotten a chance to introduce on one of these calls before?
No, this is my first call.
That's it. Well, there's the standing tradition. You have to embarrass yourself. You have to say hi, tell us your middle name, and then say you don't have one, and then fine, say that
Yeah,
your tell us tell us about introduce if you would.
yeah,
What's your favorite colors?
sure. Yeah, so actually I joined this community this week only, and I wanted to like contribute to the some service mesh related projects, and currently I'm working with VMware Tanzu Service Mesh as a SRE. So I just wanted to understand, I mean, about this domain, learn about service mesh, and so I thought of going and joining this community will help me. So looking forward working with you guys. Yeah.
It's hard to have a better introduction than that. That's great, Neha. That's perfect. It's well, welcome. Good.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. By the way, Neha, whereabouts are you calling from? What city?
It's in Maharashtra, Akola.
Okay, been there. Yeah. Okay, I'm kidding. I haven't been there, but cool, good. Okay, you're already being putting up with the harassing and the bad jokes, so that's good. We're off to a good start. Well, by Demi, um, have you been on a call before? Have we gotten to say hi? I think I'm saying it right. By Demi. Oh, yes, it's your first time. Oh, Bidame. Okay, or Bidame. Bidame or Bidame. We'll get it eventually, or one of us will get it eventually. Very nice to have you. Thanks for saying hi in the chat. If your audio is on, feel free to say hi. It'd be nice to hear you. If not, no problem. And then for Akil as well. Akil, have you gotten a chance to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I am Akhil from India, currently pursuing BSc Computer Science, uh, and interested in contributing in open source projects. And I check out this community bridge website that this is the community day of 5. So I joined it. This is my first meeting. And
Akil, that's perfect. By the way, what year in, how far along are you in your studies?
did you say something?
Yeah, are you, what year are you in university?
I am currently in 3rd year.
Okay, you might have said that. I might have missed it. Very good. Nice.
This is final year.
Oh, okay, you're heading into final year now?
Last semester.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Akil, nice to have you. Thanks for coming. Anybody else? First time on the call? Anybody else want to say hi? Oh, Jibril. Anybody else? So we've got Sarabanath. Sarabanath, do you want to say hi? I think. See, the thing about this tradition is, so long as we do it every time, it only takes so long because we chew away at that technical debt every time that we have the meeting. So this is great. All right, very good. If anyone hasn't had a chance, so Jean Tiston, she's your old news at this point. I mean, Jean, your name jumps out at me because I'm really excited about your PR. And actually, Jean, it might make sense since you're on, for you to maybe put your name down and show some of the work that you've done, because getting you some real-time feedback will be, I think, helpful to you. Always nice to show off your work too. So great. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. So first topic today was the fact that Meshery as a project and Service Mesh Performance, SMP, as a project. If you haven't, so all of you have no doubt visited the meshery.io project page, probably. Like, you're all in various ways, to various degrees, familiar with Meshery. And it's certainly our project of focus in this call. In the Layer 5 community, we have a number of projects. One of the other ones that we spent quite a bit of time on is SMP, Service Mesh Performance. It's a specification project. Meshery implements this specification. If you're like me, you think specifications are horrifically boring. And so fine, that's fair. There's another specification that's related to SMP. It's called SMI, Service Mesh Interface. SMP and SMI are interrelated and complementary. How they align, how they underlap, how they overlap, and whether or not the two projects should merge, that has been a topic of discussion over the last couple of months. Meshery implements SMI. At Meshery, and Vendu, if you cruise to the blog, actually to the last blog post on this site, there's a blog post that talks about Meshery being the conformance tool for SMI. So how does a service mesh, or how does a person know if a given service mesh has implemented SMI, Service Mesh Interface? How does everyone know if those specifications have been implemented to spec or to T? Use Meshery. It'll tell you. Ask Dhruv, he'll tell you. Great. These projects are all reinforcing of one another. They are all also, so they're reinforcing of one another, so they're aligned. They slightly overlap and slightly underlap. And to what degree they do either of the two of those things has been a topic of discussion. In preparation for Meshery and Service Mesh Performance, the two projects entering into the CNCF. So as of yesterday, it's been a long time coming. This was always the plan for the projects from the start. As of yesterday, they are both CNCF projects. This is more or less probably the first announcement of that. We'll make more announcements of the fact that that is true. And we will have more to discuss about, well, like, celebrating that, but also, what does that mean? What does that mean to the project, and what does that mean to the community? We'll discuss a little bit of that today, and probably even more of that on Friday at Friday's community call. So for most of you, I suspect many of you know that actually in this community, we meet every day, sometimes multiple times a day, because there's a lot going on, because there's a lot of you that have an appetite to dig into various technologies that are of consideration. Meshery's roadmap is, Well, it's not world domination, that's for sure. That we leave that to AWS, that's their gig. But it is large, and we're only about, not like halfway there-ish. There are a couple of major components that have yet to be added, and I'm excited for us collectively to start on some of those components. So one of those is a workflow engine. Another one is a policy engine. So workflow and policy, probably two terms that are in the future between where we are today with a V05, like a V0.5 release, and 1.0. Like there's a couple of major components that need to come forth. And so fortunately, there are nearly 30 of you here just on the call that are going to help make that happen. I just know that you are. There are, which also is an appropriate time to call out a couple of things. One, some of you have been here for a long time. Some of you have given, well, I know that you've probably hurt your fingertips on the keyboard or on the mouse for how much work you've been trying to do. So a little bit of blood and sweat. Some of you have taken on different roles on the project and in the community, and it's all to your grant, like to your benefit. So that Meshery and the projects continue to grow. So yesterday is a significant step for the projects as they enter into the CNCF. So great. So some of you are already maintainers of a CNCF project or a couple of projects. So awesome. Most of you are already contributors to the project. And actually, I'll call this out because this really pisses me off actually. And that is that I think in general, open source communities have gotten better about this particular concept, but the concept that what it means to contribute doesn't necessarily mean code at all. In fact, it doesn't mean code at all. It often is what people are referring to, but just by showing up, asking questions, that's contributing. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of folks that have shown up for about a year on the calls and don't say anything. So they don't even ask questions. They're still contributing. Really nice to see you all here. Like, it's helpful. It's no matter what you're doing, it's helpful. And so just to pick on Neha, because I want her to feel very welcome, like the rest of you, is as Neha jumps into, there's a whole set of meetings dedicated to DevOps centric things, to CI, to CD, to workflows, to automation, to deployments, and how Meshery works in different systems and all of this. And not always, most of the time, the activities that go on in there aren't necessarily code per se, but they're extraordinarily important. They're just as important as the code. As a matter of fact, in some cases, more important than the code. So that's not this community. If you're not writing code, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean you're not contributing. If you're not a maintainer, it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean you're not contributing. So there are many other communities to go to where if you disagree with that, you can almost stumble into any other community and they'll agree with you about what it means to contribute and not having to be code. That's not here. So Jean got hammered on and loved on, I guess, in the best of ways when she joined, because she was going to focus on some front end things. And oh, what a blessing that is, because oh, how much we need of people helping the rest of us interface with unexposed back end things. So good. Okay, I'm totally digressing into what's hopefully a word of encouragement, a word of celebration about the two projects entering into the CNCF. It does mean change, but not a lot, like supportive change. A lot of the changes will go unnoticed by the vast majority of you. We're happy. For my part, and for the maintainers and others that are representatives here, happy to itemize every single one of what one of those changes are. But most of them don't have an effect. We'll actually, for the community call on Friday, we'll try to itemize what each of those are. What does that mean? One of the things that is meant, and we sort of started to work on last night, is that The Meshery repository, and by the way, I need to shut up and let you guys continue. So the Meshery repository as one example, there's like 30 something in the layer 5 IO GitHub org, there's like 40 something repositories, repos. I don't know, there's like, it's about 30 of them ish or something, 25 or something that are for Meshery. They're like of the Meshery project. It's either adapters or Meshery itself or various related supporting components. And so, a lot of them will migrate from layer 5 IO org to Meshery org in the same way Service Mesh Performance will migrate to Service Mesh Performance org. And that's just a matter of helping ensure that the projects themselves are sort of their own entity unto their own right. Not that they always haven't been. There's one other thing on this topic that most of you, none of you should know really, but one of the things that Meshery is doing is creating service mesh patterns, which unto his own is a concept that needs to be explained, and I won't do that now. But I will also say that there's a service mesh patterns GitHub org. So the Meshery is an awesome thing. Service mesh performance is an awesome thing. But service mesh patterns are potentially like a standalone thing as well, or kind of like some of the WebAssembly filters, the WASM filters that some of you are working on. They too are kind of a standalone thing. So I'm just foreshadowing some potential things to come, kind of. Okay, with that, given that I ate up a lot of the time, it's a super exciting announcement. If you have questions, we'll talk more on Friday, but if you have questions in the meantime, please ask them in a public channel in Slack or on discuss.layer5.io. That's a great place to do it as well. And we'll get your questions answered in the meantime.
Thanks, Lee. Sounds awesome. Looking forward to hear more about it on the community call. So with that announcement, let's move on to the topics for today. So first we have Piyush. Piyush, would you like to talk about the system check command and what it represents?
Hi, can you hear me? Hello, am I audible?
Piyush,
Hello, just a sec. Hello, am I audible? Yeah, nice. Let me share the screen. It is visible, right?
yes, Piyush, it's visible.
Okay, sure. So we are actually talking about message retrieval system check. Okay, what are we talking about? Message retrieval system check is that we are applying, like we are running some test to check if Docker is running, Kubernetes is running, and several other things. But we want to make it work like dependent on the platform the person wants to run Meshery. Like if it is he's running it on Docker, then we should only run Docker checks. If he's running on Kubernetes, then we should only run Kubernetes checks. So how that would work? And there was one more thing to it, that in system check, when we are running these checks, we are printing these logs. And we are also using these same health checks to run as something that is a pre-run execution, which will help us to check like behind the scenes that system is ready to run these commands. Let's say someone trying to start Meshery. So we do not want to actually run the main command. We want to check if the system is actually ready for it. And if these checks are actually working as a pre-run execution, we don't want these logs to be printed. Okay, so we are managing that with a simple boolean that if it is a pre-run execution. And right now we are actually discussing what kind of checks should be run for each depending on the platforms. There it is. So this is the command that we are using as a pre-run execution. And so we are running Docker health checks when it is not a pre-run execution. That means we are running system check. That means every time we run system check, Docker will be always like tested out if it is running or not. Or if the platform is Docker and this is a pre-run execution. Like if a user wants to run it on Docker and he wants to check the Docker is running or not. If the platform is Docker, then we won't actually run the Kubernetes check because these are kind of irrelevant to the platform that he wants to run on, not Meshery, to run on the machine, to Meshery run on that particular platform. And if the user actually seeking to run Meshery on Kubernetes, we are doing the same. If it is not a pre-run execution, that means it's system check. We will run Kubernetes health checks. And if it is the pre-run execution, then we will check if the platform is Kubernetes. Then only we will run the Kubernetes check. And the rest of the checks are like the Meshery version and the Meshery vectors. I have implemented them, and we lack the token part here. There it is. We actually need to send some post like get request to get the list of requests that are running alongside Meshery, and we need to add authentication details to it, which actually I haven't added to it because we had to pass some token flag to it. Okay, so according to like a normal user experience, we don't want it will be really not good to pass a token with a system check command. So we are actually like I have started a discussion in Slack about automating the process of downloading and passing the token with these requests. So that was the thing about system check.
Thank you, Piyush. I hope I'm audible. Please say if
Yeah,
I'm not.
you are audible now. You are
Okay.
good.
Okay. So to give some context into what Piyush was explaining, the way we deploy Meshery is one of the ways is we use Meshery CLI client, Meshery CTL. So a user can install Meshery CTL on their machine and use it to deploy and manage Meshery. So one of the things Piyush was mentioning was system check, and it also has something called a pre-flight check. And this pre-flight check has already been implemented in Meshery CTL right now. So what this pre-flight check does is it basically checks if the environment is ready to be ready so that we can deploy Meshery. So it checks if the user has Docker Compose, and if they are using a Kubernetes platform, then it will check if we can initialize a Kubernetes client and all the stuff. So the pre-flight check is already been implemented, and the system check is a superset of the pre-flight check, and it has a lot more checks like it also checks for as Piyush is showing, it checks for the Meshery version, and checks if the Meshery adapters are pingable. And so basically user can use this to check the health of their Meshery deployment, and like to debug or to figure out if there is something they are missing. So that is the basic idea of this command. And Lee, would you like to talk about this more?
Yeah, so good. So what Piyush explained and Vendu explained is relatively straightforward in concept, and it's a very helpful feature to have both before someone uses Meshery or deploys Meshery, and as they go to interact with an already deployed Meshery environment. That these checks are things that people can run ad hoc, but they're also checks that run implicitly every single time someone invokes a command, like these guys said. So then, but not all checks are pertinent to that deployment. Like Piyush was saying, he's saying like, hey, this check will be run if the Meshery deployment is, on this platform or that platform. And therein is where your brain gets tickled a little bit on what checks are appropriate at what given different circumstances. And that's what we need to reflect on some. So I think there's a call to action that Piyush is making. One, he's educating everyone on the work that's been done. And then two, a call to action for people to, well, one, go try the utility, go try the commands, but two, the Piyush is linked to a design spec that I encourage everyone to review and think about which of these checks are universally mandatory. Some of these checks, they should always pass. Otherwise, you have an issue and you have to address that issue. Some of them are only appropriate in certain circumstances. And so what are those rules? Like that's what we need to reflect on. And for my part, I don't have something more intelligible, something more specific to add, but all of you do, all of you who are on the call, you face this as a user. As you go to use Meshery, which I encourage everyone to do like continuously so that you're being more and more familiar with the capabilities, so that you're implicitly testing it, that you can ask yourself this question, hey, when your deployment doesn't work or you're having trouble and you're trying to troubleshoot it, like here's one of the core utilities to figuring that out, which means, so I'll end on this, which means that like, hey, there's a system check, great. There's a system check hyphen pre-flight check, great. A subset of the checks. Maybe there should be, and there is sort of an early design spec for, gosh, Piyush, what did we call it? Is it a report, like a troubleshooting, a diagnostics report, so that you can use, like when you're facing an issue and you need to open a bug, part of opening up a bug is like the arduous process of collecting the logs, describing your environment, the reproduction steps, the repro steps. Well, wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah, that was the report that we will implement in later, which will check if all things are working, and you can add that to the issues someone's creating or having on GitHub. You can share that in Slack.
Perfect. Just because your voice is a little bit hard to hear, I'll repeat that last bit. And that is, so for any user who's having an issue with Meshery, that they can go run this system check hyphen report, have a diagnostics bundle packaged up, and make it very convenient for them to send in reports that have all of the necessary debug for a contributor to look at it and work on it.
Yep.
Cool. With that, I think it's just that the call to action to review the design spec and give Piyush feedback.
Thank you, Piyush. Thank you, Lee. The design spec is on the chat. The link to the design spec is on the chat. The next item is also from Piyush. It is about the perf command. The perf command basically is, as Lee mentioned earlier, like we use service mesh performance to run performance tests on the service mesh. So system perf is a Meshery CTL implementation of implementation of running performance test. So Piyush has been working on it for some time, and so Piyush, do you want to demo it? And
Yeah,
yeah,
sure. So before, what we were doing with perfect live was we were passing profile ID as the argument, which was kind of lame because that is too long and that had to get that someone has to know profile IDs. What other thing was that we implement the profile name. I haven't edited those examples. I will add that later. So what we are doing right now is we are running these tests with the help of names. So let's see how this works. So there are two cases. If someone wants to create a new profile with running the test, and if someone wants to uh, run the existing profile or use that existing profile with a new URL that he is like passing with the flags. These are the three cases. So let's see what like how I'm not trying to implement these. So if there are no arguments, that means he is not passing any profile. So we create a new profile. We create a new profile with sending a request, adding all these parameters, and then we save this profile on the backend. We get the profile ID, and we run the test with this profile ID on the URL that has been passed with the command. And the second thing that if someone is using the existing profile, so we get the profile, we fetch the profile first because we want to know the profile ID of this performance profile. Okay, so what will happen is we do not have unique names for performance profiles. Two profiles can have the same name. That is, let's say test. Okay, so if there is only one profile with that name, let's say there are no profiles found with the name, we will return no profile found with the given name. And if we have only one profile, that means that is a unique profile and we can execute the test with it. So we get the profile ID and we execute the test. But what if there are multiple profiles with the same name? So what we do then is we ask the user, we print all these profiles. The maximum is 10, only 10 can be printed at max. And we ask him to return like we ask the index of the profile. We are printing the index with each profile. And whatever index he will return, we select that profile back here or the profile ID and we run the profile with like the test with that profile. That's how this works. So we will see the demo now. Okay. So let's say there is a profile test. There are multiple profiles with the name test. So it will ask for the confirmation. So with the index one, it is displaying what are these extra details to uniquely identify which profile you want to select. And let's say I return 2. I'll enter 2, then press enter. Now it has selected that profile with the index 2, and it will run with this ID, the test, with the past URL, that is soundcloud.com. Test is successfully completed. Okay, and let's say the other case, I have profile with name Spotify. Let's run with this. This won't ask for confirmation because there is only one profile with the name Mute Spotify. So this directly started the performance test initialization. If we will pass logos, that is dash B, you can see several other logs telling what is the performance profile we are using right now, what is the test URL, and many more things with the developers. So the test ran successfully. And the last one was to create a new profile. That will run like this --file. So in this case, we have actually created the profile with the name Spotify, and we are running the test. There is one more thing that I've added while creating a new profile, that actually asks for URL and validate it, because we are validating URL twice for some reason. Because when we are creating a new profile, we don't want to use an invalid URL with that. So we are checking the URL once here, and we are also checking that again here for some reason, because in that other case with the profile name, we are actually checking that thing here. So if someone says why we are validating it twice, the first time we do not want to say an invalid URL on the backend with creating a profile. Yeah, so the test ran successfully. It's time for the feedback.
Thank you, Piyush. Like, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying it's time for the feedback now.
Okay. So I think like this is a good UX, and I think it handles all the use cases correctly. And uh, anybody else has any comments to Piyush?
Actually, I do. How are these profiles created? Do you have to? Is it done manually? Is it online? Do you have to? Is it like a recording? Do you have to do it once to perform that?
I don't understand what exactly are we trying to ask. Can you like explain a bit more?
I can. Does anyone other than me want to explain how to create a performance profile? Oh no, this is bad. Okay, I think
You can create it from the UI.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I will
Whenever we want to
go and explore.
run test, we can save the profile with the UI, and we can also add profiles like this, like passing a new profile. Passing this profile flag, we will actually end up creating a new profile that will end up in here. Let's see the profiles. There will be a new profile with Spotify that I just created.
It turns out it's a strategically placed question, because and it's a good thing for us to confirm, Piyush, on the is the -f flag --file flag, that's still a supported flag, correct?
Yeah, that is still supported.
Okay. And if you look at the description of that flag, so what's happening here is like from the command line, if you don't want to specify, 5, 6 different arguments, you can very simply say, well, hey, I have an existing definition, existing performance profile that I've already, mouse clicked into the system. I'd like to just run that profile, run that test, the test defined by that profile. Great, and that's what Piyush is, by and large showing. The alternative to that, though, if you didn't want to go through and use the mouse to describe your performance profile, that you can also just supply a file a simple like JSON descriptor, JSON file that has the same information, what the URL is that you'd like to send load to, how intensely do you want to send that load, for how long, what load generator do you want to use, all the same things. And as it turns out, like that file is like highly related to the service mesh performance specification, the SMP spec. The spec calls out a bit more, but that same description, that same set of information is SMP compatible. And so the last thing, Piyush, if you go back to Meshery's UI briefly, inside of, and you take a look at the details of the results of a given test, and when you view the test results if you end up check marking the box there's a new, this download. Yeah, if you click that, what you'll get is, well, you'll get an SMP compatible file. You'll get that same file. So if you wanted to, so then, we've kind of come full circle. Like you can take this file and supply it as input to define a new, a performance test. Some of what I'm saying right now, I have to, like, that's the intended design. It's been a while since anyone has really focused on that full, like someone needs to go test that what I just said remains true, that you can technically take this and go send in. Because mostly what this is showing is results, but it's also intended to fully describe the profile itself so that you can reapply it. So. Cool.
Okay, actually, if you don't mind, I have a quick question. And I know it's easy to ask questions and, give advice, that things that I cannot do. But I was wondering, is it possible that you could have applied the same paradigm to the previous demo instead of having in your code a whole bunch of if, then, else, if this, if that? Is it possible to have a test engine, and you add a test to this test engine, so that each time you think of a new test, somebody says, hey, what is this? You don't have to code and recompile the thing again.
Yeah, VJ. That's what the Get Nighthawk project is kind of about. Like, yes. If you tease out what you just said, well, here, I'll present this to all of you. Like, if you're running your infrastructure, you've got some workloads that are running. You want to make sure that the changes, the way that you're configuring your infrastructure, the way that you're configuring Kubernetes, you're configuring your service mesh, is in alignment with your performance requirements, or you want to understand the effect. You're using this performance management, right? You're doing these things. Well, part of the question that you begin to ask yourself is like, am I doing it well? Like I'd turn over to look at Samir and I'd say, Samir, how fast is yours running? Because I'd like to compare that to mine, and to see if I'm, slow poking along. I've got a bad config. Like, how do I tune this thing to be just perfect? Okay, well, that sort of leans into what VJ was just asking, which is, so I can go run a test and it'll tell me under these constraints with this configuration, this is the type of, it'll characterize the type of performance that I would expect, or that not that I expect, but that I'm getting. Okay, well, what if I tweaked this configuration over here? Like, what if I reduce the number of times that my distributed traces are being sampled? How material of a performance effect will that have? Well, I don't know. Okay, fine. Let's go change it and let's run a test. Okay, well, what if I lowered it a little bit more? Oh, geez. Okay, so there's this this question of optimization. What's the optimal number of time of what's the optimal config with what do you call it? With a bunch of permutations to it. It's like no human wants to sit there and be a monkey and run all the permutations of the test to figure out what the optimal configuration is based on your requirements and et cetera. Well, that's the path that we're on, is to having this system do that for you. Eventually, for you to say, here's my constraints. Constraint number one, this service called the payments service, where we accept credit cards and we process credit cards, and we need to make sure all those transactions happen like that, or whatever the service is, right? Like, here's my service, and it needs to be respond in under 500 milliseconds, or it needs to have some certain performance characteristic to it. So here's my constraint. My constraint number one, this many milliseconds or less. Constraint number two, I want it to be as resilient as possible. Like, I don't want the user to try to process the credit card payment and it to fail and return back to them with a failure. They might just get upset and like take their credit card somewhere else. Like, heaven forbid that. So I want the system to be resilient. I want it to retry if the connection fails. Okay, good. Well, how many times should I do that and still stay within the 500 milliseconds bounds? Don't ask me. I don't know. Like, can't the system figure that out for me? Yes, that's what we're going to be working. That's what Get Nighthawk is about. Adaptive load is to leverage Nighthawk's adaptive load controllers to have optimization routines programmatically, recursively run performance tests that arrive at optimal inflection points based on constraints that you define within your system. I think that's the most elegant that I've described that thus far. I'm getting better.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. Anybody has any other comments before we move on to the next item? Okay, so thank you, Piyush. Thank you, Lee. Let's move on to the next item. Samir, do you want to uh, s- take control?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Samir is going to talk about configuration of virtual services for Meshery in Istio. So Samir, all yours.
Okay. Mm, yeah. So yeah. So one thing is, I have actually two things to talk about. What exactly happening? Okay. So let me know if my this figure is visible. Otherwise, I'll just make it a bit bigger. Okay. So this is basically the infrastructure which we are following to be a very resilient, or you can say um, secure services. So here if you see what we are uh, using at the right side is from the Azure infra. Okay. So if you see here, the ISTO ingress gateway is not public, so which ideally receives some request from an application gateway which is owned by Azure. So why we took this route? Because to have a very secure infrastructure. So this KTS services and all its components or any services all are private. So having a private IP. So what essentially happening right now? So once the request comes into the application gateway in the Azure, then it's followed by some HTTP listener and rules. Then we have a private link which is enabled for ISTO gateway. So in this, what exactly happens depending upon your request? So this request will be forwarded to this particular, you can see a private link IP which is hitting here. So now the request from the user goes through this many thing. So now what is the error which is happening currently? What I um, currently I see is, so when I go to the Meshery and click on the provider, okay, then I go to, let me just go show you quickly. Okay, so this is probably the first thing which I also, so this is my gateway, which is basically a Meshery gateway. and I am pointing it to the root. Okay, so let me quickly apply to show how it is behaving now. Okay.
And just in case it's not obvious for everyone else, in this environment, Samir is running Meshery on Istio, right? Meshery is on the service mesh as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so now if you see, I have a gateway and I have a Meshery which is running. So let me just go up to my browser. Okay, so this is my DNS or my application gateway URL, wherein I am just forwarding it with slash. Okay, now when I go here,
I think you didn't save the file when you change it to slash.
Yeah,
Slash
you did save the file.
I didn't save.
the file.
Sorry, that was my bad. Okay. Yeah, so now the provider comes. So now I go and select it. Then when I go sign in here, okay, so you can see the error. So instead of it goes to my app gateway, it is redirecting me to the Messery or my, what I would say, my ISTO gateway. So this is not the desirable. That is why it is saying the site can't be reached, because this is in the private IP. So you cannot reach this. So this is one thing which is kind of not supporting my architecture. Yeah, so it is like when it is redirecting, this is essentially hitting this particular DNS name. Instead, it should hit this particular DNS name, which is here. So maybe I need your help to how to do this, or what exactly I can do for this one.
This one brings a smile to my face, Samir. This is, I'm sorry to say that unless Utkarsh or Abhishek or someone else on the call corrects me, we'll need to change a little bit of code here to help to enable this use case. Like, what a great use case. As a matter of fact, we've seen this one before, but we didn't. But in your case, we're committing to making you successful. Like, we really want you to be successful. And so we postponed like you really updating the system to facilitate this kind of a thing. Like, it is.
And instead of the application gateway, there are some scenario which people are using, like front door here, Azure front door, or some of the similar kind of gateway from AWS also. So what my thing is, we may need to enable some sort of verification code based mechanism. So wherein we can just talk with the API of any particular services or any particular identity provider here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. That near as I can tell, that suggestion would circumvent the system, like, or circumvent the need for, like, from these the social authentication that's happening here. The OAuth that's happening is that once a user's identity has been confirmed by the identity provider, Twitter, GitHub, Google, LinkedIn, they are in a hard-coded way, those providers will send a response back to the Meshery's remote provider, the page that you're on now, it will receive well, it'll receive an access token back. And no, hold on. We will generate an access token. There may be a point of manipulation right here where we might be able to address this. This is not something that I don't think it's something we'll be able to find the answer for on the call. The thing that you suggested though doesn't rely on callbacks from the way that OAuth 2 works. There's callbacks and things that happen in rerouting and redirecting which I think can be addressed, but also the approach that you've suggested, I think circumvents the need for that because, well, either way we'll need some change, and it's absolutely something we should do. It's a great use case. Right now, the service mesh labs that are running on lee-calcote.com that are running on O'Reilly, the labs that we have out there for people to learn about Meshery and learn about service meshes, they suffer in the same way as you are here. And so it's time for us to get a design spec together but some questions toward that. So Utkarsh, Abhishek, others, do you guys have questions for Samir prior to proposing a solution?
No, the issue is clear. I'm just thinking of what else can be the way we can counter this problem. Could be possible that we support or start supporting a LDAP integration with anyone who wants to do it.
Like, yeah, and specifically with like Azure IAM or whatever the version of, does Azure call it IAM or do they call it?
Yes,
Okay.
but unfortunately, we are not using AD services for price constraints.
Sure. Yeah, actually, that's a great question right there. Is there any, so there's no active directory, yeah, there's no directory services at all that you guys are using, whether from.
We can go for a Auth0 authentication, but because that is our kind of authentication system.
I see. Okay. Okay. Good. Utkarsh, any questions?
Yeah, not right now because I got the problem. I'm just thinking that how we can.
Yeah.
And the next thing which I wanted, that is very straightforward, like I'm not able to run it behind a reverse proxy because there is multiple redirection happening, so which is causing in the same way how Grafana happen in Grafana it happens. So maybe we have to have some kind of a uh, adjustment or configuration. So this is in this way, maybe domain or root URL or something. Let me just show that quickly. So as I told, like we have DNS from ingress. Okay, so which is 1 second here. Yeah, so basically this one we so everything is solved from the Kubernetes, so we do not want to change the DNS, so we want to access it with path. So when I go and do these changes, yeah, so Sorry.
Uh, I I think the exact will be inside URL.
No, this will work. I'm not sure. Let's see. One second. Yeah, so if I go here now, yeah. So it is giving some of this kind because there is a redirection happening. So if you see, it's going to log in, and this multiple redirection is not supported by STO.
Redirections not supported. Yeah, but well, I also wonder, right? I mean, if so, in this case, the user doesn't have an active token, and so Meshery, like while the first request, it looks like it's getting rerouted to Meshery properly. Meshery will then probably redirect from root, from slash to slash login. Is there a default path? Like you might need to map slash login as well to Meshery if it's possible.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just try out this one. No. But if I do one thing, it will work, but it is kind of a messy work. Let me just see this one.
I think you misspelled the provider.
Provider. So now it comes, but here there are nothing to.
Oh yeah, sure. And these are all highly related concerns. I missed the change that you just made. Was it?
Yeah, this one.
Oh, slash provider. Okay, yeah.
You were telling about something. Can I try this out?
Yeah, it might be that. Yeah, it might be that like the path that you're on is about right. It might be that there needs to be a couple of matches between slash provider and slash login. Because what Meshery wants to do as an application is require a valid token before the user can go in to use the rest of the. And so it will, Meshery as an application will redirect the user to, what is it slash provider? I'm trying to remember. And then slash login is in there somewhere. Like, I don't know that anyone sits on a slash login page as much as it's part of they get redirected. There's a diagram.
It is not found.
So I need to look. I need to refresh my memory. So I guess there are probably a couple of things. I mean, one Nivendu just for in terms of the meeting itself. One thing that I might suggest to everyone who wasn't able to show their work today and is looking for some feedback, to do a quick recording of your work and share it in the Slack, or if you like, share it on the issue that you're on, or share it in discuss.layer5.io. That will help solicit some feedback from people. And if it's like, well, that's not really helpful because you need like live feedback and you want to engage in a discussion, for my part, I have time to hang out for the remainder of the hour for anyone who wants to, get feedback on their stuff. But Nivendu, I know we're over time, so.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thank you everyone for coming. We are out of time, so we have missed a couple of items, and some of these has been updated in the meeting minutes, and some of these will be demoed or showed in Slack. And we have some continuous integration or CI items. I think that will be discussed on the CI call tomorrow. So if you are looking into that, then you can jump in on the tomorrow's call. So with that, thank you everybody. You are feel free to hang out here if you like to continue. Uh, yeah, thanks.
Nice. Then, so Samir, that might be enough. That might be enough for us collect. It's not like everyone's going to go work on this in secret or what have you. But like, there's a sequence diagram that kind of shows the flow of what happens today. I'll go grab that. We'll try to use that as a backdrop as a design spec to make sure that we're capturing that either we're presenting a configuration that achieves what you're looking to do today with no code change in Meshery, which would be great. I suspect that's not gonna fly. Like I suspect the provider itself needs to be enhanced, and it's been on the roadmap for the provider to support alternative forms of authentication. So to your point, like an email address with like an email and a password, a username and a password like that. And so maybe a verification token like that. Also then in your case, I don't think it helps as much, but to support directory integration or OpenID or other forms of credentials. And so, yeah, so let's initiate a thread. Let's initiate I'll go get the sequence diagrams. We can start to brainstorm.
Sure. Yeah.
Samir, this is great. It's really great. This is nice. Jean, Miss Tiston, did you, since you're still here and dedicated to staying up to the wee hours of the morning, can we take a look at your work? Maybe get you some feedback? I know some of it is just like, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if I recall, kind of where we left off is you're enhancing both the toaster notifications and the notification center itself inside of Meshery. And there's sort of, you're seeking out an opinion and a perspective on just how many buttons should be there to control the opening and closing of the notification center, the drawer, as well as like what should be the exact behavior of some of those buttons.
Yep. Do you want me to share my screen to show?
Yeah, if you would, because I would like to
Okay.
I would like for everyone else to express an opinion because I think there's multiple right answers.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen? And can you hear me? Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So right now, the toaster notifications look like this. It's currently in dark mode, and my changes involve making them in light mode, and another one is some changes on the drawer and the buttons here. So here's my changes. Right now, the toaster notifications are already in light mode, and then the notification, so the drawer sort of got a bit of a change look. It's a bit wider and then different buttons. So this one does the clearing of all the notifications, and this is the back button. But I think there was a comment about the X button supposedly is supposed to close the drawer. So I'm not sure if what are your thoughts on that one?
I
Cool.
just overlooked. Skip that draw button to close it. It's okay right now. I just have one question that this clear all button also uh, closes the drawer, right?
I'm sorry, I
Uh,
I did not catch
the
that.
clear all button closes the
Mm-hmm.
drawer also right now.
Oh yeah, it clears all the notification and it also closes the drawer at the same time.
Okay.
So should it be just clearing everything and not closing it, or should we have the button up here?
Lee.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
It
I
would make sense, yeah. So if I'm clearing everything, it should ideally be closing.
Okay. Cool. Looks good.
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, I give a +1 on that. So, Gene, if you go back to the current system, the icon here, the like slanted hamburger,
This one? Mm-hmm.
it. I think the challenge, the conundrum, the reason for part of the reason for the requested change in the first place is I think the potentially non-intuitive nature of what that symbol means.
Mm-hmm.
And for me as a user, if I'm facing these errors like, oh, Istio didn't install, oh, geez, oh, what's going on? Like that's an issue. I gotta, and it's going to tell me the details. But it's like cluttered with like some other stuff like, oh yeah, something else was successful. Okay, great. I like where I get nervous and where it's like, well, like we should never leave. Ideally, you never leave the user guessing. It should be so intuitive that it's like very confidently they click on things and they are expecting a behavior and they get that behavior and it feels great.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's like the only change the only necessary change potentially, and I think that's what we're arriving at. That's what Samir is suggesting, and basically what Ayush is suggesting as well is like, hey, leave the behavior the same, just change out the icon. I think because that icon, the check, I think is slightly more intuitive. And yeah, if you don't have any notifications, like it makes sense to close it. For me, when I had first started to use it, it was, holy hell, what just happened? I just clicked the button, all my notifications are gone and the drawer went away. And it's like, I want my stuff back and I can't, like they're gone. It's like, well, that's not fair. I didn't know what was going to happen. I felt cheated. And okay, fine, maybe we should put a little warning that says, are you sure you want to clear them all, something, and we could leave the icon. But unless I'm mistaken, I think the double check is a little more intuitive as to what's going to happen. Especially if you go back to the new design, I think that this is especially true if there's a check mark. Oh, okay. See, so this is what we could do is like, see, you know how we have the X on those? Well, if instead of, I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud. This is just a thought. Is if instead of an X, if there was a check mark, if you're indicating to the user that a check mark here clears the single notification and a double check does all, well, that's reinforcing of one another and the user starts.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
And then, yeah. And
so should we change it to?
Yeah, I think so, because actually, you know what, this is great. I'm glad that we had this conversation and you didn't just do a recording and then we didn't have, because, well, when you think about it, the toaster notifications that come out, they have a small little X on them. And yeah, if you hit the X or if you hit the notification, like it goes away. It's quite ephemeral. Like it's just, and great. That's what the X does. The X has that context to it. Maybe is like, it's just dismissed, like, you know, get out of my way. The check mark here is indicative, is slightly different. Like if we use the double check mark and a single check mark, it's, hey, this thing isn't gonna, if you waited long enough on the toaster notification, it would just go away by itself because it's like, it wasn't important enough to stick around. These other ones, no, they have a small, an emergent life cycle to them where they're gonna stick around until you acknowledge them and then they'll go away. And later, and Gene, I expect that you'll be working on this, and that is like later, there's a little more life cycle that needs to happen. Like, well, there was an error here. You can dismiss it with the check mark, fine. Or there'll be like a recycle arrow that's like, no, I think I fixed the issue. Why don't you go ahead and retry that same operation? Oh, great. Okay, so then there becomes a life cycle around what this is to do. Or maybe it's like, oh, I want to send that to Slack, or I want to create a, like, there may be other actions to take.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a couple other, like, hey, if I could get really nitpicky with you for a moment, and that is,
Okay,
one,
sure.
do you think that we'd be successful sliding the chevron and what will be the single check mark all the, you know, all the way to the
All
right?
the way to the right. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Nice. And then let me ask you this, and this is I don't have an answer. I'm asking everyone. What does the notification, what does the bell do for us here? Should it be inanimate, or should it be like an expand all or a collapse all? Along as people think about that, understand that Gene is also looking at predefined filters, because the errors that people are seeing here, eventually they will have severity assigned. Information, success, error, whatever that, you know, like they'll have a type, a category of the notification. And so you might want to filter very conveniently on like the notification type. So we would anticipate that there's probably buttons up there for those things. So imagining that. Yeah.
Yeah, because in the old one there is a show error notification filter and a show all notification filter.
If we just have a drop down for all types of severity, so that we could select what all we want to see, just like our console have.
Cool. That's an idea.
Like,
that actually answers my question about like, what does the bell do? It's like, oh, you applied a filter. How do you unapply the filter? You could either click the same filter button again, or you can click on show all notifications.
We can have a drop down, I think, to have a checklist for 4 of them and click on whatever we need.
Yep. Yep, that's a good. Here's the issue with the dropdown. They're ugly. One. Sorry, I don't mean to be.
Yes.
Actually, it's not as much of that as it is. It takes 2 clicks to do the same thing you could otherwise do in 1 click. Now, look, if you have 10 different types of notifications, like, yeah, please don't show me all 10 buttons at once. Like, give me a drop. Give me some other way to manage this information. In this case, if it's just a handful,
we can have a sliding right now it is a circle. When we click on it, it just expands to become something like tube.
Yeah, that could be it. That
would be quite neat.
Anybody else have an opinion like that? That could it would be less intuitive. There'd be less. It would be less discoverable. It would take someone hovering over to see that is a thing, but that could work. Does everyone understand what Ayush was describing? I don't know if I have an example. Gene, does it make sense what Ayush said?
Sorry, can you repeat, like, how does that actually work?
Like when we click on the icon, that bell icon, it will just like our cards are expanding downwards, it could expand rightwards and have the options.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Just
Yeah.
icons and small labels. That would look neat.
Yeah, that can work, and yeah, it would look cleaner.
You can have a radio button, all or show all comments, or just show all errors, show severe errors, show so that you. And actually, I have another question. So it's nice that you have. What if there is something that I have to see, right? So is there something that indicates, hey, wait a second, whatever it is you're doing, you have to see this notification, right? So now I know that there is a notification, so I have to click on that notification to see what notifications I have, right? So it is that is dependent upon my action. So it is triggered by my initiative. But what if something did you do you see what I'm trying to get at? Or what if there is something that I have to be notified of? How does it do that? Just as an example, so I'm struggling, I'm trying to do something, and it's trying to tell me, hey, listen, you're not connected to the network. But here I am, I'm trying to run all kinds of tests, I'm trying to do everything, nothing. Actually, that's not a very good question. But suppose, let's say this is a more life-threatening application, and say there's a patient out there who's got a severe condition. They have to let me know, hey, do you know that this person is really severe, so that should not be dependent upon my going to the notification to checking to see if everything is okay, right?
Yep. Well, there is.
So to add to that, whenever you do something, yeah, there is a pop-up which comes like this.
Yeah, there's a post notification that pops up on the bottom right, which tells you that.
That is correct, but the problem is, what if I'm not looking there? See, I'm I'm making this too complicated, So the thing is, I'm working on it. I'm looking at something that's of interest to me. It's at the top, I'm just looking at the test result or something like that, performance test or something like that. And this comes at the bottom of the screen. It pops up for 2 or 3 seconds, and it goes away, right? So is there something that that will listen? You really have to look at this. There's something that says
Something
or
like
maybe it's not.
solution, something like having a probable solution that you could do this because it is not here, so you cannot perform this task too. Something like that.
No, no, I understand. So, Bijoy, do you want to get a notification about this? In
You
that
mean
case,
like an a modal that comes into your face, doesn't go away. You can't do anything else unless you acknowledge that this thing has happened.
So something like that. But again, a model is very crude. So the notification, if it has a flag, or yeah, I guess if it's really that serious, yes, you have to have a model. But if there is over the notification area, when things like that come up, you have a visible red flag that always pops up, whether the notification screen is on or not.
Cool. Yeah, Vijay, we might have to. I don't. Here's okay. As people think about this, it's good to take inspiration from other systems. So Vijay and I actually both used to work at Cisco, and this is a Cisco product. Actually, we used to. Anyway, there's teams of teams that work on uniform user interface, uniform UX, and user research, and etc. And so there's been a ton, like, don't take for granted that there hasn't been a ton of discussion in the team that has implemented this product behind like what it's doing and how like it's fairly well designed is what I'm getting at. And actually it looks kind of good. I have some comments about how it looks, but it looks pretty good. And what I wanted to help us reflect upon is this is a system that manages infrastructure. What does Meshery do? Well, it manages infrastructure. Okay, well, it's pretty similar. Good comparison. Okay, fine. So here's a dashboard. We just land. By the way, I'll give you guys all the link to this. You can come try it out and play with the system and dink around, which will be helpful. Just don't dink around too long. Like, go back and do some design coding after that. That is, so they've got a dashboard. There's tons of things to look at and then go through. And it's you should go look. But there's two things relevant to, or there's three things I think relevant to what we're talking about right now. All right. So they got a couple of things in your face about the health of the system. One of those is a perpetual navigation bar that isn't entirely dissimilar from what we have. Like, what Meshery has is actually fairly similar layout in many respects. So Gene, actually, you can see some things that are a lot easier to understand over here, that there are categories of menus. And Ayush, like, it's not as easy to understand that there are categories of menus in Meshery, nor that they're expandable or collapsible. And so that's something that, but over here, there is a notification center. Okay, this is where alarms come. Immediately, we're seeing that between your critical and your warning, these two severities, this is what you got going on. Good. If I click anywhere on here, it activates, deactivates the sidebar. Wait a second. If I click, that's a little weird. Anyway, if I click on it, it shows this. Oh, it has filters, just like what we were talking about. Oh, if I filter just on critical, there's 6 of them. If I go back to all, okay, great. So here, like, again, like this would be our bell, all, and then these would be the icons for the others. Okay. All right, here's an alarm. Now, can I dismiss it? No, that's just the signal for the fact that it's critical. This is when it happened. Okay, great. Well, what do I do? Well, I can view all. So that's maybe another way of, maybe it takes me to a different page. Yeah, where there's a table full of these. So just a different information architecture for the same data, but is providing it to you in a different way in which you can provide, do bulk actions. Great, dismiss them all, maybe as my bulk action, or do that. Okay, fine. Maybe there's ones that I have acknowledged. Oh, you mean the check mark that we were talking about? Yeah, okay. So you're here. One nice thing, and we'll get to this probably, is that you'd have an alarm, you'd click on it, and it will deep link you to the piece. Well, I guess in this case, it deep links you to this view. I thought it might deep link you to the infrastructure that's failing, like where you're managing it, you know, separately in some other UI. We don't have to walk through all this. Just a good thing to reflect upon how another well-designed system has approached it. They've got this little X. What does the X do? Oh, it closes the bar. Okay, fine. So I can close the bar with the X. I can close the bar by clicking on it again. Can I close the drawer, sorry, by clicking somewhere else? Yeah, okay, it's fairly, it wants to go away. Like by default, it doesn't want to be shown. Okay, fine. There is a cousin, a sibling drawer called requests. What's a request? A request is our operation. When you go to install Istio service mesh, like the error that Gene is seeing, for us, that's a request. That's an operation. Like, hey, I want this management system to perform this action. The actions they don't always happen like that. Like they may take 4 steps to execute the request. It may take an hour or 2 hours or a day. Those requests, those operations may fail anywhere along the way. Okay, well, so there becomes another construct that has a life cycle. So there's this concept that there's a life cycle for what they're calling an alarm, what we're calling a notification, a small life cycle that they're facilitating to dismiss them or export them or do, you know, sort them and do whatever. Then there's also requests that, you know, like I'd have to, here's all the requests. This one was successful. If this one, they were trying to turn on a virtual machine, it failed. If I click on it, it does deep link me. It links me to the request and the execution flow because there may have been multiple like things to execute. I'll stop, but just this is something for you guys all to. So Gene, I think if we can conclude so that you can be successful, and these things are always changeable, but it sounds like, we'll see how well this works. It sounds like you'll have like, thank you, Nitish. You'll have like 2 or 3 icons that are filters, one for errors, one for successes, one for infos. You'll probably leave the notification bell to perform a show all action, basically to clear the filter. You'll remove the X button, just have the double checks, which will perform this, have the same behavior that the other icon had. You will perhaps remove the small chevron on the lower left-hand corner, or leave it like, it depends on how dismissible the drawer is. I forget, but.
I think it can be dismissed by clicking outside.
Okay, then it's kind of, yeah, then maybe we don't need it. Like I would suggest that we don't need it. The other thing is you'll right align the, you know, all the things. You will put a single check mark instead of the X, and you will also hopefully maybe add a little bit of like bolding or italics or something to more crisply set apart what Samir was referring to, like the contents of the details. Like if there's a suggested remediation, a probable cause, and an error code that would ultimately also have a hyperlink. So Gene, there's an error code reference that's in the Meshery docs.
Yeah, I think I think I had a discussion with Michael about that the events that are being captured are not in the same format, not in the new format yet. So the details about the other details are not yet part of the object that was being passed on to those notifications.
Okay, maybe
right
that's.
Now.
I know Abhishek is tracking toward changing those, but so maybe we'll leave the hyperlink out as a separate concern. But So then I think, yeah, that was all the, does that get you what you need? Is that...
Yeah. Thank you so much to everyone who commented, and I already listed out the things that I need to change. So yeah, thank you so much.
It's looking great. It's looking good. But just as as one last statement for me, I know Ayush had been sort of, considering and working toward consideration of how we might ultimately have themes, like have a light mode, have a dark mode. Something to be chatting with him about, or sort of thinking on as you go through this.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea.
Nice. Well, now that Pranav is here, I think we're done. Actually, so we actually are. It's just sorry, Pranav. Thanks for coming. We're just ending the call.
Oh no. I was busy debugging the filter. I think it's pretty much done. Just one limitation is that I'm not yet handling types, so JSON can have integers or strings and stuff like that. I need to modify the config for allowing Samir to mention or specify what type the header is. So once that's done, I think the jot manipulator 9000 is complete. That's my update. Yeah, that's my second.
That's great. Thank you all. Very good. It's been like almost a 2-hour marathon for some of us. So, so thanks a bunch. Thank you for hanging out. Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. And thanks.
Bye.
Oh, if you have viewers. Okay, bye.
Still hanging out.